In the shadowed corridors of metaphysical inquiry, the Tree of Life emerges not as a mere diagram or symbolic artifact, but as a profound cartography of existence itself, mapping the interplay of forces that constitute the cosmos and the human soul. This structure, rooted in Kabbalistic tradition, reveals the tree not as a static emblem, but as a dynamic schema wherein the threefold wisdom unfolds, the body as the vessel of manifestation, the soul as the mediator of vital energies, and the spirit as the transcendent principle of unity. Such a map addresses a metaphysical problem inherent to consciousness, the fragmentation of being into apparent multiplicities where unity appears veiled by the illusions of separation. This is no transient dilemma of individual psyche, but an eternal tension woven into the fabric of reality, where the emanations of the divine cascade through layers of density, demanding recognition not through effort, but through alignment with the underlying order. The question awakens not in the clamor of daily existence, but in the quiet recognition that consciousness itself is tripartite, forever navigating the thresholds between matter, psyche, and nous. It stirs as an intimation that the Tree of Life, with its 10 sephirot and 22 paths, encodes the threefold wisdom as a universal archetype, reflecting the descent and ascent of divine light through the worlds of Assiah, action, Yetzirah, formation, and Briah, creation, each corresponding to the alchemical principles of salt, sulfur, and mercury. This awakening is timeless, echoing across epochs where the soul confronts its own architecture, not as a personal affliction, but as the inherent condition of embodied awareness. The metaphysical problem thus presents itself as the perpetual quest for coherence amid dispersion, where the tree serves as a glyph, illuminating the pathways back to originary unity, not through arbitrary seeking, but through the inherent pull of structural necessity. Historically, this theme traces its origins to the syncretic soil of Hermetic Alexandria, where Egyptian mysteries intertwined with Greek philosophy, birthing a cosmology that viewed the human microcosm as a reflection of the macrocosmic tree. In the works of figures like Philo of Alexandria, the Logos mediates between the divine and the material, prefiguring the Kabbalistic tree as a ladder of emanations, with each rung representing a stage in the threefold unfolding of wisdom. Gnostic currents such as those in the Nag Hammadi texts amplified this by positing a pleroma of aeons, where the soul's journey through archonic realms mirrors the sephirotic descent, emphasizing the threefold division of hilic, material, psychic, soulful, and pneumatic, spiritual natures, each layer demanding traversal for the restoration of divine harmony. Neoplatonism, through Plotinus and his Enneads, formalized this as the emanation from the one through Nous and Psyche into matter, establishing a hierarchical yet interconnected structure that Kabbalah would later ecumenically absorb, integrating the Plotinian hypostases into the Sephirotic framework. Early Kabbalistic cosmology, as articulated in the Sefer Yetzirah and the Zohar, integrates these strands, presenting the Tree of Life as a glyph of the Ein Sof's infinite light, refracting into finite forms. Here the threefold wisdom manifests as Nefesh, the vital soul tied to the body, Ruach, the spirit of discernment, and Neshama, the divine breath of intuition, aligning with the Hermetic triad of corpus, anima, and spiritus, and further enriched by alchemical correspondences that view the soul's progression as a transmutation of base elements into refined essences. This historical confluence underscores that the tree is not an invention, but a revelation of perennial structure, where Alexandrian Hermeticism provides the alchemical lens, Neoplatonism, the metaphysical scaffolding, and Kabbalah, the symbolic depth, all converging in Trinosophy as the doctrine of the three. The fundamental premise asserts that true transformation resides not in moral rectitude, emotional catharsis, or ideological adherence, but in the structural reconfiguration of being. It is the alignment of the threefold elements, where salt crystallizes form, sulfur ignites volition, and Mercury facilitates fluidity, mirroring the tree's paths as conduits for divine influx. In this view, the metaphysical problem resolves through recognition of the tree as a map of Trinosophy, the wisdom of the three, wherein consciousness awakens to its own triadic nature, not as a choice, but as an ontological necessity. Thus the stirring begins, drawing the contemplative mind into the depths of this eternal architecture, where the question of unity amid multiplicity persists as the foundational enigma of metaphysical contemplation. At the heart of the Tree of Life lies the trinal architecture, a doctrinal foundation that decomposes existence into three interdependent principles, each manifesting across the Sephirot and paths as a reflection of the divine triad. This structure reveals the threefold soul: Nefesh as the animating force bound to the material realm, Ruach as the discerning intermediary that navigates ethical and intellectual currents, and Neshama as the supernal essence attuned to the divine will. Paralleling this, the alchemical triad of Salt, the fixed body, Sulfur, the volatile soul, and Mercury, the mediating spirit, underscores the tree's function as a map where matter coagulates, Psyche transforms, and Nous illuminates, each element contributing to the holistic equilibrium of being. In the three worlds of Kabbalah, Assiah, the world of making, Yetzirah, the world of formation, and Briah, the world of creation, this trinality unfolds as layers of density. Assiah corresponds to the body and salt, where physical laws govern manifestation, and the Sephirah of Malkuth anchors the divine light in tangible form. Yetzirah to the soul and Sulfur, where formative energies shape psychic realities, with Sephirot like Netzach and Hod embodying the dynamic interplay of forces, and Briah to the spirit and Mercury, where archetypal ideas emanate from the divine, as seen in the supernal triangle of Kether, Chokmah, and Binah. These worlds are not mere hierarchies, but interpenetrating spheres, each Sephirah participating in all three, such as Yesod, serving as the foundation that bridges material and formative realms, ensuring the continuous flow of wisdom through the tree's structure. The three fires, physical, psychic, and noetic, further articulate this architecture. The physical fire consumes and sustains the body, akin to Nefesh's vital heat that animates the lower branches of the tree. The psychic fire refines the soul's passions, mirroring Ruach's alchemical sulfur that burns in the middle pillar, forging discernment amid dualities. And the noetic fire illuminates the spirit, reflecting Neshama's mercurial insight that radiates from the upper Sephirot. These fires burn eternally within the tree, their flames tracing the paths that connect Sephirot like Binah, understanding, to Chokmah, wisdom, where the threefold consciousness awakens, material awareness in the lower branches, psychic discernment in the middle pillar, and spiritual intuition in the upper triad, each mode interweaving to form the complete metaphysical edifice. This trinal structure permeates Hermetic texts, such as the Corpus Hermeticum, where Thoth Hermes describes the soul's tripartite nature, the mortal body subject to dissolution, the immortal mind attuned to the divine, and the intermediary spirit that binds them, much like the tree's pillars maintain balance through their triadic relations. In Alexandrian Hermeticism, this manifests as the Poimandres, the shepherd of men, guiding through the three realms of earth, ether, and heaven, aligning with the tree's pillars of severity, mercy, and equilibrium, and emphasizing the alchemical operations that correspond to each level. Kabbalistic cosmology echoes this in the Zohar's depiction of the soul's levels, where Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama correspond to the three columns of the tree, ensuring balance through their interplay, and integrating Gnostic elements that view the archons as distortions to be rectified through trinal alignment. Neoplatonic emanation theory, as in Proclus's Elements of Theology, posits the one emanating through the henads into the intelligible triad of being, life, and intellect, which Kabbalah adapts as Kether, crown, Chokmah, and Binah, the supernal triangle from which the lower Sephirot flow in a cascade of triadic progressions. Here the threefold modes of consciousness emerge: hilic perception tied to matter, psychic contemplation of forms, and noetic union with the divine, each mode reflecting the eternal procession and reversion inherent to metaphysical reality. Trinosophy, as the synthesis of these traditions, emphasizes not mere amalgamation but alignment, where the adept perceives the tree not as a tool for synthesis, but as a schema for harmonizing the triads without reducing one to another, allowing the inherent coherence to reveal itself through contemplative immersion. Clarification is essential. Trinosophy is alignment, not synthesis. Synthesis implies a forced unity that may obscure distinctions, whereas alignment recognizes the inherent coherence of the three, allowing salt to stabilize without rigidity, sulfur to enliven without chaos, and Mercury to mediate without dilution, much as the tree's paths facilitate flow without merging the Sephirot. In ecumenical Kabbalah, this alignment integrates Jewish mysticism with Hermetic and Neoplatonic elements, viewing the tree as a universal map where the Shekinah, divine presence, descends through the triads, fostering a contemplative disposition that transcends sectarian boundaries. The disposition of the adept within this architecture favors silence over belief, for belief imposes form where structure alone suffices, potentially veiling the pure emanation of wisdom. Silence allows the threefold wisdom to resonate unchecked, revealing the tree's paths as silent conduits, rather than vocal doctrines, and enabling a deeper attunement to the metaphysical rhythms. Structure prevails over experience, as the adept contemplates the Sephirot's arrangement, the right pillar of expansion, Chesed, the left of contraction, Yetzirah, and the middle of balance, Tiferet, not through subjective encounters, but through objective metaphysical order, where the geometry of the tree dictates the unfolding of reality. Doubt serves as purification, stripping illusions that obscure the trinal reality, much as alchemical calcination purifies salt, distillation refines mercury, and sublimation elevates sulfur, each process mirroring the adept's internal refinement. In this doctrinal framework, the Tree of Life stands as the ultimate glyph of Trinosophy, where the threefold wisdom manifests as an eternal architecture, inviting contemplation of its immutable design. The adept, attuned to this, navigates the paths with restraint, recognizing that the trinal structure is the foundation of all metaphysical inquiry, unchanging amid the flux of appearances and providing a perennial map for the soul's orientation within the cosmos. The journey through the Tree of Life unfolds as a metaphysical narration of the soul's movement, commencing with descent, proceeding through confrontation, reorientation, and culminating in ascent. This process mirrors the emanative cascade from Kether to Malkuth and the return upward, enacted within the threefold wisdom where body, soul, and spirit engage in an inevitable dialogue with the divine structure, each phase revealing layers of ontological depth. Descent initiates as the soul's immersion into the denser realms, symbolized by the fall from the supernal triad into the lower Sephirot. Metaphysically necessary, this phase enacts the divine will for manifestation, where the infinite light of Ein Sof contracts through Tzimtzum, creating vessels for finite expression and allowing the boundless to assume form. The symbolic function resides in the paths descending the left pillar, such as from Binah to Gevurah, where severity imposes boundaries, crystallizing the nefesh in material form like salt fixing volatile elements in alchemical coagulation. Psychologically, this resonates as the soul's encounter with limitation, where the boundless neshama veils itself in ruach's discernment and nefesh's vitality, evoking a sense of exile that echoes the Gnostic myth of Sophia's fall. Yet here, it reflects not error but the structural imperative for differentiation, enabling the soul to experience the multiplicity inherent to creation. Inevitable, for without descent, unity remains undifferentiated and potential unrealized. Irreversible, as the soul cannot unmanifest once embodied, the imprint of matter enduring eternally. Internally coherent, as each sephira receives influx from above, ensuring the triad's balance even in fragmentation, with the middle pillar providing subtle equilibrium amid the downward flow. As descent deepens, confrontation arises in the middle worlds, where the soul grapples with the tensions of Yetzirah. This stage demands engagement with opposing forces, symbolized by the central pillar's Tiferet, harmonizing Chesed's mercy and Gevurah's judgment in a dynamic synthesis of polarities. Metaphysical necessity dictates this as the point of alchemical solvet coagula, where sulfur's fire confronts Mercury's fluidity to refine the psyche, dissolving illusions and reforming them in greater purity. Symbolically, the paths intersecting at Netzach and Hod represent victory over illusion through intellectual rigor. Confronting the klipoth, shells of imbalance that distort the tree's harmony and manifest as inverted energies requiring rectification. Psychological resonance manifests as the ruach's struggle with dualities, where desires clash with intellect, mirroring Jungian individuation as a shadow integration, though only as a pale reflection of the deeper Kabbalistic tikkun, where the soul mends shattered vessels through conscious engagement. The soul, ensnared in psychic currents, faces the necessity of discernment, unavoidable as the tree's structure mandates equilibrium amid opposition. Once entered, confrontation propels forward without retreat, coherent in its demand for synthesis of opposites into a unified volition, forging the soul's capacity for ethical navigation within the formative realm. Reorientation follows as the pivotal suspension, where prior alignments dissolve, allowing reconfiguration. Symbolized by the path from Yesod to Tiferet, this phase bridges foundation to beauty, necessitating the soul's pivot from descent's inertia toward ascent's pull. Metaphysically, it fulfills the teleology of return, where the threefold wisdom realigns. Nefesh yields to Ruach's mediation, preparing Neshama's ascent like Mercury dissolving fixed salt to liberate sulfur in the alchemical vessel. The symbolic function lies in the Da'at, the hidden knowledge abyss, where veils lift, revealing the tree's inverse as the tree of knowledge inverted, a mirror that reflects distortions for correction. Psychological resonance appears in the dissolution of ego structures, resonant with archetypal death-rebirth motifs, yet Jungian terms serve merely as echoes of the initiatic void, not its essence, as the soul confronts the silence of unmediated being. Inevitable, for the soul must unmake to remake, shedding accretions accumulated in descent and confrontation. Irreversible, as dissolved forms cannot reform identically, the transformation etching new pathways in the soul's architecture. Coherent, as reorientation restores the trinal flow, aligning the pillars in silent harmony and preparing the ground for the upward emanation. Ascent consummates the journey, elevating through the upper Sephirot toward Kether's unity. This phase symbolizes the return of light, paths ascending the right pillar like from Hod to Bina, where understanding integrates wisdom in a harmonious reunion. Metaphysically necessary, it completes the circuit of emanation and return, the soul's neshama reuniting with the divine, Mercury elevating sulfur and salt into sublime unity, transcending the limitations of lower worlds. Symbolically, the crown receives the influx, the tree blooming as the soul traverses the veil of Paraketh, embodying Trinosophy's alignment through the rectification of all Sephirot. Psychological resonance appears as integrated wholeness, where psychic fragments cohere into a stable edifice, faintly akin to Jungian self-realization, but rooted in Neoplatonic Henosis, the union with the One. Inevitable, as the structure propels toward origin, the divine gravity drawing the soul upward. Irreversible, for ascent transmutes the soul eternally, infusing it with supernal light. Coherent, as each step builds upon prior phases, the triad achieving equilibrium in the divine embrace, with the middle pillar serving as the axis of return. Throughout this threefold journey, the movement feels structural and unavoidable, the soul navigating the tree's immutable paths as revelations of the threefold wisdom's profound depth, each phase interlinked in an eternal cycle of emanation, confrontation, dissolution, and reintegration. Within the Tree of Life's architecture, the abyss of reorientation emerges as the most destabilizing phase, a profound suspension where the soul confronts the void between worlds. This crisis manifests at the threshold of Da'at, the non-sephira, where the lower and upper triads diverge, engendering a loss of reference that shatters established meanings and plunges consciousness into uncharted depths. Here the threefold wisdom unravels. Nefesh's material anchors dissolve into formlessness, Ruach's psychic frameworks collapse under their own weight, and Neshama's spiritual intimations fade into an encompassing silence akin to alchemical nigredo, where salt, sulfur, and mercury merge into undifferentiated chaos, stripping away all but the essential substrate. The loss of reference unfolds as the soul detaches from the familiar paths, the pillars of mercy and severity no longer providing orientation, leaving only the middle pillar as a tenuous thread amid the void. Metaphysically, this abyss serves as the necessary inversion, where the tree's emanative flow reverses, demanding the soul's surrender to the Ein Sof's infinite potentiality, a space where creation and dissolution coexist in tension. Symbolically, it mirrors the Shevirat HaKelim, the breaking of vessels where primordial light overwhelms finite forms, leading to existential silence, a profound quietude that envelops consciousness, stripping it of conceptual scaffolding and revealing the bare ontology of being. This silence is not absence, but the ground of being, where doubt purifies by eroding illusions, aligning with Trinosophy's emphasis on structure over belief, and allowing the soul to confront the raw architecture of the tree without intermediaries. The collapse of former meanings intensifies this crisis, as archetypes once vivified by Ruach's discernment dissolve into ambiguity, forcing a re-evaluation of all prior alignments. In Kabbalistic terms, the Qliphoth rise not as external adversaries, but as internal distortions, the inverted tree manifesting shadows that question the soul's coherence and demand their integration or transcendence. Neoplatonically, this echoes the soul's forgetfulness in descent, but reorientation demands remembrance through dissolution, the psyche confronting its own hilic residues in a process of metaphysical stripping. Hermetically, Mercury's volatility dominates, dissolving Sulfur's fixity, evoking a teleological necessity. Without this collapse, ascent remains impossible, for the soul must shed accretions to ascend unburdened, the abyss acting as a crucible for refinement. Suspension between worlds characterizes this phase, the soul hovering in Yetzirah's liminal space, neither fully descended nor ascended, but poised in a state of potentiality. This interstitial state fosters initiatic crisis, distinguished from pathological breakdown by its teleological orientation, the former directed toward reconstruction and alignment with the divine order, the latter toward fragmentation without purpose, devolving into chaos devoid of metaphysical anchor. Initiatic crisis preserves an underlying order, the tree's structure enduring beneath the turmoil as a silent blueprint for reassembly, whereas pathology lacks this metaphysical anchor, resulting in mere psychic entropy without the promise of renewal. In Alexandrian Hermeticism, this suspension parallels the Hermetic seal, containing chaos for transformation and ensuring that dissolution serves the greater work. In ecumenical Kabbalah, it aligns with the Tikkun Olam, rectification born of shattering, where the abyss becomes the forge for mending cosmic fractures. The existential silence that follows metaphysical disintegration envelops all, a void where the threefold consciousness pauses in contemplation of its own dissolution. Nefesh's vitality quiets into stillness, Ruach's volition suspends in abeyance, and Neshama's intuition withdraws into profundity, creating a space for realignment where the soul, stripped bare, attunes to the tree's silent harmonies and the subtle vibrations of the divine. This silence, profound and unyielding, reveals the abyss as the womb of possibility, where the soul confronts the limits of form and emerges prepared for reconfiguration. Psychologically resonant with archetypal dark nights of the soul, yet such correlations remain secondary to the structural imperative. The crisis purifies through negation, preparing the trinal elements for reintegration and ensuring that the journey proceeds with renewed coherence. Emphasizing its teleological necessity, this dissolution ensures that reorientation occurs not arbitrarily, but as an ontological mandate, the abyss functioning as the pivotal fulcrum where the middle pillar's equilibrium is forged in void. Without suspension, the soul clings to partial alignments, obstructing the full flow of divine light through the Sephirot and perpetuating imbalance. The abyss therefore stands as the inexorable heart of the journey, a metaphysical forge wherein the soul's architecture is tempered, refined, and realigned, emerging from the crisis with a deeper attunement to the threefold wisdom. In the aftermath of the abyss, integration manifests as the soul's alignment within the Tree of Life, forming an inner temple where the threefold wisdom coheres into a stable architecture. This state emerges not through triumph, but through the quiet reconstitution of Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, the Sephirot realigning as conduits for divine influx and establishing a harmonious flow. Metaphysically, integration fulfills the emanative cycle, the lower triads mirroring the supernal in a reflective symmetry, where salt stabilizes form without rigidity, sulfur enlivens essence with controlled vitality, and Mercury facilitates perpetual flow, ensuring the soul's participation in the cosmic order. The inner architecture solidifies as the pillars equilibrate, Tiferet at the center, harmonizing opposites, embodying Trinosophy's alignment in a structure that transcends transient experiences. Symbolically, the temple forms with Kether as the dome of unity, Binah and Chokmah as foundational arches of understanding and wisdom, and Malkuth as the base of manifestation, the paths serving as silent corridors of contemplation that weave the triads into coherence. This formation reflects Neoplatonic return, the soul uniting with the One through structured emanation, yet rooted in Kabbalistic tikkun, rectifying fragmented vessels into wholeness and allowing the Shekinah to dwell within. Ethical stability arises inherently from this alignment, the soul acting with restraint born of discernment and attuned to the metaphysical necessities. Ruach's mediation tempers Nefesh's impulses, while Neshama's intuition guides without imposition, fostering actions that resonate with cosmic order and reflect the balanced interplay of the tree's pillars. The transformed individual speaks less, words emerging only when structurally necessary, echoing hermetic silence as the guardian of wisdom and preserving the sanctity of the inner temple. Greater responsibility weighs upon this state, not as burden but as ontological extension, the soul bearing the weight of interconnected sephirot, reflecting the macrocosm in microcosmic equilibrium and embodying the quiet authority of aligned being. Avoiding illumination's glare, this re-ascent yields quiet authority, the inner temple radiating subtle influence through presence alone, without the need for proclamation. The paths ascend fluidly, the threefold consciousness integrated, matter informed by Psyche, Psyche elevated by Nous, each level interpenetrating in eternal harmony. In ecumenical Kabbalah, this mirrors the Shekinah's indwelling, the divine presence stabilized within the soul's architecture. In Alexandrian Hermeticism, it parallels the adept's theurgy, aligning triads without fanfare, the operations of ascent conducted in contemplative restraint. Thus, the formation culminates in a serene architecture, where the Tree of Life internalizes as the soul's eternal map, a testament to the Threefold Wisdom's enduring structure. The inner primacy of structure ordains the eternal alignment of the Threefold Wisdom.